We start off season 2 with Thomas being racist. Wait, what?
Blue is the only proper color for an engine. Oh, I don't know. I like my brown paint.
Thomas is a blue supremacist.
I've always been green. I wouldn't want to be any other color either.
I'm green. It'll do fine. It's beautiful. And I think it's what I want to be.
Blue is the only color for a really useful engine.
Hey, I didn't know we were getting a sneak peek of Daily Wire's animated content. So Thomas and his racist butt just vibing. Meanwhile, Percy's here just to get some coal in the trucks. And then Percy backs away for a little bit, and then coal gets all over Thomas. Thomas thinking that Percy did it intentionally. It's taking so long for him to get cleaned up to the point where Toby has to take Annie and Clarabelle out on Thomas's lawn. And Thomas is still mad about this scenario by the time the day is over. The next day, Percy decides to get a drink of water, but the water tower is by the unsafe buffers. Percy can't find that he's able to stop, and Percy derails from the unsafe buffers, getting himself dirty. Thomas laughing at him. But it's okay because the two make up that evening. In the next episode, a bunch of cows cause Edward to lose half of his train. Edward felt a little bit of a bump, but him and his driver didn't notice until they stopped. Gordon and Henry, meanwhile, GOW! What are those faces? Dear Christ! Well, anyway, Gordon and Henry, meanwhile, are laughing at Edward for having a cow lose his train. Toby thinks that they're being mean to Edward. We cut to Gordon taking the express, and what did you know it? There's a cow on the track. Obviously, Gordon doesn't want to hit the cow, so he stops and waits for it to shoo away. But it doesn't. So Henry comes by, and then Henry is just sitting there, waiting for the cow to move. Henry shoos the cow away, and it doesn't. So Henry just backs up and tells the signalman about what's going on. Turns out that the cow lost her babies, and so Percy went on to go ahead and get the cow's baby and return it to the cow. That night at the shed, Edward mocks Gordon and Henry for being afraid of a little cow. These episodes are a decent way to start season 2. Some more season 1 charm with some way brighter lighting than the previous season. That's immediately noticeable. You see the glimmer of the sunset a little bit more, very orange with its lighting, but hey, these episodes are still cute and fun and a decent way to start off the season. Birdie's chase opens with Edward waiting on Thomas to give him some of his passengers from his train. After a while of waiting, Edward, his driver, and his fireman, and all those other guys that a train needs decide to leave. Unknown to them, Birdie the bus actually had Thomas's passengers because Thomas's fireman didn't come in that day. So Birdie has to chase down Edward in order to get him. Birdie catches up to Edward and sees that he's at a crossing. So Birdie scoots down there, but by the time he gets down there, Edward already leaves. So Birdie continues to chase on Edward. And then Edward makes it to the station, and that is just then when Birdie manages to catch up with Edward, with the drivers explaining everything. Birdie then tells Thomas about what happened, with Thomas telling Birdie that he did a damn good job. He didn't say damn, but you get the idea, right? Saved from Scrapped is actually a pretty interesting episode because this is our first proper introduction to the scrapyard. Basically, this is where pieces of machinery and engines go where they are no longer really useful. So our friend Trevor over here is about to get scrapped in about a week or two because he's considered old-fashioned by his owner. He then decides to tell Edward the good old days from when he was pretty useful.
Oh yes, I like children.
Ew. Edward then finds a reverend who'd be willing to take in Trevor. Edward telling the reverend about the rides Trevor loves to give to children. Oh, come on, man! So Trevor gets cleaned up. The reverend decides to ride him a little bit. And now Trevor has a brand new home, where he can live out his days to be very useful at the church picnics and fairs.
Giving rides to children.
What the fuck, bro?
I like children.
Stop saying that! So Birdie's chase is actually a lot of fun. Definitely gives me the Thomas and Birdie's race kind of vibes, but only it's a chase instead of a race. But saved from the scrap, it's kind of fucked up when you really think about it, outside of my pedophilia jokes. But, I mean, again, this is our first introduction to the scrapyard. And the fact that they could just murder off any of these engines whenever they're not considered very useful or when they're considered old-fashioned, it's pretty fucked up, especially when you consider the fact that in this world of the island of Sodor, the trains are basically people. Like, they talk, they have feelings, they have relationships with their drivers and all the other members of the island. So it's pretty fucked up that they could just kill them off like that without any consequences. Old Iron opens up with James being mad at Edward for being late.
Late again!
Okay, late again. We then get a way longer than necessary sequence of James on the turntable, where he is also complaining about Edward and how much of an old piece of shit he is.
Old Iron? Slow? Why, Edward could beat you in a race any day. I should like to see him do it.
Have I mentioned in the series yet how much of a dick James is? We cut to the next morning where James's driver is... Oh! So yeah, James gets uncoupled, but James, being an impatient little shit, decides to just pop on out without a driver. So they send in Edward to come on and help James. So James is going out of control, he can't stop, makes sense, he doesn't have a driver. Edward tries so hard to catch up to James, but he eventually does, with one of the firemen tying a rope around James's buffer.
He pulled the noose tight.
Oh god, they're trying to kill him! So everything's a-okay, and Edward now gets some brand new iron. The next episode features the return of Trevor's attraction engine, but he's all sad because he doesn't have a whole lot of work to do for the day.
I do like to keep busy all the time, he sighed one day.
I do love my slave labor. But lucky for Trevor, Sir Topham Hatt has a job for him down by the seaside, where Trevor can give all the rides to all the children he wants. What the fuck?!
Children, that will be lovely.
What the fuck, Trevor? Why do you gotta be so damn creepy all the time? Well, lucky for you, there's not a whole lot left to discuss about your episode. Your new episode right over here is mostly just you being more of a pedophile and Thomas being more of a racist.
Thomas eyed the newcomer doubtfully. A what engine? But you don't run on rails, puffed Thomas.
Seriously, what the hell, Thomas? But you, Trevor, since the police only seem to give a shit about the white people who are pedophiles, well, I'm gonna have to call the police on you. Yes, hello, police. I'd like to report a pedophile in the area. Yeah, it's a Thomas and Friends character. What do you mean stop abusing this number's power or else you're gonna kill me? Percy and the Signal opens up with Percy being a little turd to everybody and teasing them.
Hurry up, Gordon. The train's ready. Gordon thought he was late.
Percy then visits James, telling him that Sir Topham Hatt will see him and that he should stay in the shed. So all the other engines are forced to do James's work for the day, mainly because James is just staying in the shed, because he thinks that Sir Topham Hatt told him to, until his driver said, "Hey yo, James, Sir Topham Hatt didn't say anything about that." And then he vows to kill Percy. Sir Topham Hatt then yells at both Percy and James, even though James is more the victim in this scenario than anything else. Later on that day, James and Gordon figured out a way to get back at Percy by telling him about backwards signals.
We had spoken of backing signals, put in James. They need extra special care, you know.
Percy then heads up to a signal, and he thinks that it's a backing signal. His driver's telling him to move on, so Percy goes ahead and moves back. Driver's like, "What are you doing?" And Percy thinks it's a backing signal, and then his driver explains everything. And Percy's like, "I gotta move before everybody sees me," and then Gordon rushes by. Percy heads home to the shed that night, mad and embarrassed, while Gordon and James have big grins on their faces. Our next episode is where we get introduced to a brand new engine who's a pretty big character for the early seasons. That being Montague, aka Duck. I don't know why they call him Duck. It's just... Beats me. Duck heads off to work with Percy while all the other engines are too busy making fun of him because his name is Duck. So Topham Hatt is busy having tea time and... Wait a minute. Why don't Americans have tea time? Like, seriously. Why doesn't America have a specific time in the day where everybody takes a break for work and we just sit down, chat, and have a nice cup of tea? Like, I like tea. I like eating little biscuits and little treats. I'm drinking tea while I'm editing this. Like seriously. Like, we need, like, a tea time here in the United States. Like they're so focused on milking workers as far as they possibly can. But, like, you know, the UK, they get tea time, and they're just as productive, if not more, because they're not draining their workers, and they're not exhausted to the point where they just want to die. Like, and yeah, American movies and TV shows, they tend to make fun of tea time quite a bit, but I feel like if America had tea time, things would be a lot better for their workers. What was I talking about again? Oh yeah, the silly train show about slavery. Alright, back to the episode. So Topham Hatt notices that there's a fight going on outside, so he puts on his big boy britches and gets on out there. So, it's Henry, Gordon, and James versus Percy and Duck. And so Topham Hatt notices that everyone's fighting, and he is like, alright, everybody stop this crap and get back to work. And then they get back to work. So, these episodes are pretty good, I'd say. Nothing too bad about them. It's nice seeing Percy get his comeuppance in the first episode, even though James was kind of being victim blamed a little bit, and he really didn't deserve any type of punishment. But the introductory to Duck is a pretty decent episode, and overall, it is a pretty decent batch of episodes, which unsurprisingly made me mad wanting America to have tea time. Percy Proves a Point opens with Percy working hard at the new harbor. And it's here where we're introduced to a new character, a helicopter named Harry.
Why can't it go and buzz somewhere else?
Why are all the steam engines racist? Percy and Harold meet up, and Harold is like, my wings are so much better than your rails. I can go up in the air. And Percy's like, my rails are better than your wings. Who needs stupid wind and air anyway? I can be on rails. Rails are good. You're old-fashioned, Percy. Oh, up and away. This is what doing absolutely nothing but watching a children's show about talking trains does to your brain. It screws you up, bro. Percy arrives at the quarry to get his freight cards and is still furious about the Harold encounter, expressing his anger onto Toby, who just sits there and does absolutely nothing. Percy eventually finds Harold while he's on his run, and he's like, hey, I'm going to race Harold to see if I can actually go faster than the helicopter. And what did you know it? Percy went faster than the helicopter, to the point where everyone sang Percy a wonderful song to congratulate him. I can't show you this song due to copyright reasons, but I will sing it for you.
I take a look at my enormous penis, and my troubles start melting away. I take a look at my enormous penis, and the happy times are coming to stay. I gotta sing and I dance when I glance in my pants, and the feeling's like a sunshiny day. I take a look at my enormous penis, and everything is going my way.
Joke's on you. It was actually a plug for my other train show, Thomas and Friends of Bridge, on my other YouTube channel, Weird TV. Go check it out now. The runaway opens up with Thomas being ill, so he's unable to head into work today, so Duck is actually going to be doing his line today. But it's not a whole episode of Duck doing Thomas's stuff, that's just the beginning of the episode. Thomas gets better immediately. Now, the repair guy left Thomas's brakes feeling a little stiff, so they weren't working as they should, but were working decently enough to where Thomas could still work. But when his driver and his firemen exit out of him for a little bit at a station, Thomas went bye-bye, completely out of his control. Hey, wait a minute. This is just old iron, but with Thomas. What the frick? I can't believe that we are in season 2, and the writers are already resorting to recycling episode ideas and plots, like, within the same season even. Like, seriously. Now, the Harold episode was fine. It kind of started off a little weak, but definitely gave me Thomas and Birdie's chase vibes by the end of it all. But this episode just feels a little lazy. It just old iron again, but with Thomas. Like, what the frick? Percy takes a plunge, opens up with Percy telling 2 little twin engines about a story. Now, they're nameless at the moment, but this is the first appearance of Bill and Ben. Henry shows up pretty mad, saying that the shed is only for Sir Topham Hatt's engines, so Bill and Ben run away, never to be seen again for the rest of the episode. Since Percy's story was about water, they have a little conversation about water and trains going in the water and how Percy's not afraid of it. Percy reminding Henry of the time that he got stuck in that tunnel, only because he didn't want to get a little rain.
No one ever lets me forget the time I wouldn't come out of the tunnel in case the rain spoiled my paint.
Yeah, because it was fucked up. Thomas and Percy noticed that there is a danger sign in the mist. Thomas saying, hey, yo, there's a danger sign. We probably shouldn't go past it. I remember the time I saw a danger sign and I fell into a mine. And Percy's like, yeah, I won't fall into a mine, Thomas, you fucking idiot. Later that day, Percy plots a deal with the cars that he is going to push him after they see that sign. The trucks are excited because, hey, yo, we never get to push an engine with their permission. Hell yeah, let's do this. Although, they didn't stop when Percy told them to stop. And so, plunge. Percy takes a plunge right into that lake. Sir Topham Hatt shows up and he's like, Percy, what the fuck? And Percy's like, I'm sorry, sir, I won't do this again. We're gonna get you some cranes and get you out. They get Percy out. Henry has a big ol' laugh at Percy. In the next episode, we see Duck bragging about on how great it is to be in Great Western.
I'm Great Western, and don't we know it's Great Rome?
This episode is our first introduction to our very first diesel engine, who is named Diesel. Real creative name there, Audrey. So Duck really isn't liking Diesel that much, mainly because he's kind of a prick. Duck is teaching Diesel on how to handle the trucks. Diesel gets a bunch of trucks and they refuse to cooperate with him, with Diesel growing more and more impatient. The trucks are refusing to move and Diesel actually ends up breaking several of the trucks. The trucks even sing a little song about how much of an idiot Diesel was.
Trucks are waiting in the yard, packing them with diesel. Show the world what I can do, gaily boast the diesel.
That was easily the greatest song that Ringo Starr has ever been a part of. These episodes are nice and fun. Percy takes a plunge. I remember being an absolute classic as a kid. And I had no idea that that episode was even the first appearance of Bill and Ben. They really didn't get a proper introduction. But it's nice to see Percy be a little cocky, something we haven't really seen much of him. But he gets his comeuppance in the end. And it's interesting to see the first appearance of Diesel too. So overall, some pretty neat episodes. Here we have the follow-up to Pop Goes the Diesel, where the trucks are still singing the Pop Goes to Diesel song. Duck apologizes for what the cars did, but Diesel is saying that it's his fault to begin with, while the other engines call BS. The next day, Diesel lies to the cars, saying that Duck told him some funny jokes about the other engines. No surprise, the other engines hear about this and they think that Duck said all that crap, and they are pissed. To the point where they even refuse to let Duck back in the sheds. Sir Topham Hatt hears word about this and he just sends Duck off. And yeah, that's how the episode ends. And with that, we've officially made it halfway through season 2. What a not appropriate time for a segment like this, folks. Basically, for this segment, I want to go over some elements we've seen throughout the last season, and basically the same as what we did for halfway through season 1, like, I don't know, a million years ago. Now, the big thing I want to talk about with this segment is something that just cannot be avoidable. The trains are fucking slaves. It's not implied, it's not, like, a little hinted at. These trains are slaves. I mean, for God's sake, Trevor legitimately calls his owner his master.
But my master says I'm old-fashioned.
That's fucked up! Speaking of that Trevor episode, he was going to be Smelters in that episode. Trevor, who is alive, a living, breathing creature in this universe of Thomas the Tank Engine, was about to be fucking murdered because he was deemed old school and out of date or out of fashion, whatever. Like, he is alive. These trains aren't really treated as people. They're treated as machines, which is fine in our reality where trains, cars, whatever, don't really have feelings and they can't talk. But in the world of the Island of Sodor and Thomas the Tank Engine, where they do talk and they do have feelings, I mean, I assume they have feelings, it is kind of fucked up that you can just kill them just like that. And now, before we move on to the rest of Season 2, I want to talk about the whole racism thing. So, a few episodes ago, we met the character of Diesel, who is a diesel engine, and he hates all steam engines. And guess what? All steam engines hate him, too. And this will be a little bit of a spoiler for later on in the series, but if I recall, basically every other diesel engine in this franchise, with the exception of, like, 2 characters, I think, are flat out evil. They're either buffoonish, they're either dicks who do not want to do any work or barely do any work, or they just flat out want to kill steam engines. Just wait till we get to Thomas and the Magic Railroad, guys. That'll be something. Alright. Now it's time for Season 2, Episode 14, A Close Shave. This is another classic, by the way. Duck is feeling sad that he got kicked out of the shed, but Edward tells him to cheer up by doing some work. Yay, more slave labor. But then, suddenly, a bunch of trucks just get loose. They go loose. And they're heading right towards Duck. So Duck just keeps on going faster and faster and faster, trying to avoid the trucks. But eventually, he fails, and he actually ends up crashing into a barber shop with all of those trucks. The barber is actually very mad at Duck for crashing into his barber shop, so as a punishment, he puts shaving cream on his face. Okay. But then Sir Topham Hatt comes in and says that Duck did a good job by preventing a train crash. Although he did cause an even bigger crash by almost killing some people. But hey, whatever rocks your boat, Sir Topham. Sir Topham Hatt tells Duck that he can come home because he knew that Diesel was a piece of shit from the beginning. Well, then why did you send him out to begin with? The other engines welcome Duck home. There, episode over. Better Late Than Never is about a bunch of workmen that are working on a viaduct, the part of the main line, which makes several of the engines have to slow down on their routine, making them late to their stations, making Thomas, who's usually the one waiting at the station, very pissed.
Why should I keep my passengers waiting while Henry and James dawdle about all day on viaducts?
Henry tries to defend himself a little bit, but then Thomas rushes out in a bit of anger as he desperately tries to get to his next station, where Birdie the boss is also waiting there very impatiently. Thomas makes it to the station very, very late, and Birdie yells at him for being late, but Thomas tries to defend himself. We then cut to later where James is late to giving Thomas his passengers, mainly due to the viaduct. Thomas calls some BS on that crap, and then he gets out of there, and then he sees that Birdie has broken down on the other side of the road, and because both of them are pretty late, Thomas decides to help out and takes Birdie's passengers to the station that they were supposed to be. And so Thomas learns a valuable lesson that sometimes being late is okay as long as you're doing the right thing. In the next episode, we get introduced to a brand new pair of Scottish twin engines called Donald and Douglas, with Donald being the number 9 engine and Douglas being the number 10 engine. The two were sent from a different railway in order to help out with Sir Topham Hatt. Sir Topham Hatt will be deciding which one he wants to keep and which one to send back. So there's this brake van who really doesn't like Douglas. So Donald shows up and says,
You're a muckle nuisance.
George Carlin is trying his absolute best with the Scottish accent. He really is. So the brake van is being an obnoxious little shit. So Donald beats the shit out of it. As you do. Later on, Douglas is back again. What the fuck is going on? What the fuck is it, Mia? What's going on? Holy shit, I made it! Oh! Oh! In your fucking face, Gendar! Yeah! Woo! Oh! This little adventure from Rick did work. Oh! Wow. We got no time to waste. I need to get in there. I need to kick Gendar's ass, and I gotta save my friends. I'm coming, guys! Ah! Oh shit. Poor little film buff. When will you just stop fucking trying? Sure, you made your way back here, but as long as I'm here, you will never truly be home. The moment I'm done with this train shit, I will do my master plan. And it's gonna be so fucking fun. So anyway, later, Donald is actually backing up, but the rails are a little slippery, so he actually ends up crashing into a nearby building. Sir Topham Hatt is not pleased. Oh, I see, Sir Topham Hatt. When Duck crashes into a building, it's all fine, and he's a hero. But when the black engine does it... So while Donald is getting his tender fixed up, James is forced to do his work for the day, much to the annoyance of James. Douglas then meets up with James, and James is reminded of the time he crashed into all of that tar. So James is actually stuck with the same great van that Donald was teasing earlier. And the great van is actually really messing with James and making him all exhausted. So he asks Douglas for help, and Douglas helps by pushing James up the hill and through the stations. But these trucks won't have it. And Douglas actually ends up killing the fucking great van. Holy shit! In my home dimension of demons, I have done far worse things than murder. Far worse things than murder. A caboose. Bet that film buff is probably dead right now. Whichever dimension he is in, he likely isn't surviving. It's winter time, and to that I say, bullshit! Did you not see the last video? Ignore that part. Donald and Douglas are connected together to one coach for some reason, and, you know, they're clearing the rails from the snow until they see that Henry is trapped within the snow. So the two of them get him out. We cut to the sheds, where the rest of the engines give special thanks to Donald and Douglas for rescuing Henry in the snow, but they're all disappointed to figure out that Sir Topham Hatt will have to send one of them away, saying that it's bullshit. Percy goes and talks to Edward about this, and Edward tells Percy that he needs to do a deputation. So, one of the engines have to go ahead and talk directly to Sir Topham Hatt and tell him that something is wrong and that Donald and Douglas need to stay. They all decide that that engine should be Percy. So Percy goes up to Sir Topham Hatt, tells him that Donald and Douglas should stay, both of them should stay, and Sir Topham Hatt later makes up his decision, declaring the fact that both Donald and Douglas will stay on the island of Sodor and get their names written on them so that we can further tell them apart. All the other engines are ecstatic. The next episode is one that I've been really excited to go ahead and revisit, that being Thomas Comes to Breakfast. The episode begins with Thomas's driver congratulating him on a job well done, saying that he knows this branch line so well that he could go ahead and ride without him. Thomas, not realizing that his driver was joking, brags about this to Toby and Percy. Toby and Percy are saying that Thomas is full of himself and that he needs a driver, you dumb little shit. The next morning comes and a fireman is making a fire inside of Thomas, making him all warm and toasty, and Thomas decides to go on a little joyride all by himself with zero driver. But the fireman accidentally screwed up some of Thomas's brakes and controls, so Thomas has zero way of stopping, and he ends up crashing into the station master's house, ruining not only his house, but especially his breakfast that his wife made him.
Look what you've done to our breakfast! Look what you've done! Look what you've done to our breakfast! To our breakfast! Now I shall have to cook some more! Look what breakfast! Look what breakfast! Look what breakfast! Look what you've done! Breakfast!
Donald and Douglas come over to help get Thomas out of the station master's house. Sir Topham Hatt yells at Thomas for fucking shit up and, running without a driver. And so Thomas is going to have to be sent to the workers in order to get fixed. And some diesel engine will have to take over his duties while he's away. Teasing us for next episode, which we'll talk about tomorrow, of course. But anyway, I really enjoyed these episodes. The first episode with Donald and Douglas, it was cute. It was nice, permanently making Donald and Douglas members of the cast. But it might just be nostalgia, and it might just be that redub that I showed by Joey Turner that I have a soft spot for. But I really enjoyed Thomas Comes to Breakfast. It was a fun ride, and it was great to rewatch. So yeah, really enjoyed it. Hey guys, webcam film up here. So I'm gonna be recording a few of the remaining episodes for SteamTember via webcam because that's the fastest way I know how to get a video out without barely having to editing at all, outside of including the intro and outro at the beginning and end of the video. And if any of you guys think this is suddenly weird compared to the rest of the other videos, remember I did do a video that was nothing but my face. Although that was during my mental breakdown, it wasn't a shitty webcam, but fuck you. It's been 30 seconds, right? I can swear. Although I completely forgot about that rule in the last video. I expect this to be longer than any other SteamTember, mainly because with the webcam videos, I tend to ramble on a lot more. Like, for instance, in my MCU video, the webcam segment was the longest out of all of them. That's basically why that video was like 35 minutes or whatever long that video was. But with all that out of the way, let's take a look at the next episode that directly follows up from the events of Thomas Comes to Breakfast, or Thomas Goes to Breakfast, whatever the title was, I already forgot. That being, I forgot to silence my phone. That being Daisy. And guess who we get introduced to in this episode? So yeah, Thomas is getting fixed up in the shop due to his incident in the previous episode. So a new diesel rail car engine is coming to do his work while he's away. That being our very first female engine, which is kind of weird that it took this long to get one. That being Daisy. And remember what I said during the mid-season 2 break on how Reverend W. Audrey really didn't like diesel engines, and basically all the diesel engines in his works are fucking assholes? Daisy's no exception. I don't know who decided to put fucking makeup and eyelashes on a train, but it's there. The diesel has eyelashes. So Toby and Percy are introduced to this new engine named Daisy, and Daisy being one hell of a bitch. They show her to the engine shed. She doesn't like it in there. Then they take her to the coach shed, and she's fine. She just doesn't like the fact that Annie, Claire, and Henrietta are in there. So Toby and Percy have to take them out of the way because. Not to mention the fact that Daisy really hurt their feelings. So Daisy does her first job for the day, and while she's carrying passengers inside of her, she's forced to carry a milk cart. She doesn't want to carry a truck of milk because I'm pretty sure her workman said that it's not right for her to carry cars and loads, so it's best that she don't do that. So she's making a big fuss about everything, and all the passengers are late to where they need to be already, and they haven't even left the damn station yet. And so they eventually take the milk truck off of Daisy, and she's on her merry way. And at the end of this episode and the beginning of the next episode, they see that Daisy is very lazy. Now let's think about this for a minute. I think with that scenario in particular, I don't think Daisy is lazy. Yes, the show wants you to believe that she's lazy, but really she's not. Now, as a worker, typically you need to do whatever work they want you to do. And if not, you're fired, or in the case of the trains and Thomas and Friends, you fucking die! But with this episode in particular, and in the case with Daisy, her workman that typically works on her specifically said that she shouldn't be carrying loads and trucks and freight cars and all that stuff. If not, it'll fuck up her joints or whatever, or how her trains work. Now, for all I know, and for all we know, Daisy could be talking out of her asshole right now. Do trains in the Thomas universe even have assholes? I mean, they have teeth and eyelashes apparently, so I guess an asshole is not that out of the question. But now, all we know is that she legitimately can't carry those coaches or freight cars. So the next episode comes by, and Toby and Percy are fed up with Daisy's shit. Daisy left the milk cart again, so Percy has to take that. And Toby's like, hey, Percy, I'll take that just as long as you handle my freight cars. So Percy heads over to the quarry, and the trucks decide that they're going to pull a little prank on Percy because they're the troublesome trucks, and they're very fucked up guys. So they do pull a little prank on Percy, and Percy ends up crashing into a brake van, which finally led to Daisy to actually do some work. And then Toby takes Percy to the shop, and Thomas comes back and takes Andy Clairvaux for a run. And yeah, that's the episode. I'd say these episodes are fine. It's kind of annoying that the first female engine in the Thomas and Friends universe is such do you guys think of these episodes? Let me know in the comments, and stay tuned tomorrow for the next episode. Maybe it'll be a webcam video like this. Maybe it won't be. I don't fucking know. Anyway, guys, see you then. So this is the episode where we are properly introduced to Bill and Ben as characters, and where we actually get to know their names and their roles on the island of Sodor. So they're busy working in the quarry, and one day they put together some freight cars, and then they left to get some more, and then they realized that, oh no, their freight cars are missing, so they have to solve the mystery on where they went. Yes, we're getting a Thomas and Friends murder mystery today, folks. They were able to figure out, due to some oil leaking, that their cars were taken by a diesel engine. And Bill and Ben are very, very scared. But their driver said that they will be playing a little trick on the diesel engine, because they don't know that Bill and Ben are twins. So they removed the names, and Bill and Ben are off to face that diesel. They eventually find the diesel engine, and it's a brand new character named Boco. Boco's refusing to give away the car, so Bill backs away, and then Ben pulls up, and the two keep on going back and forth, messing with Boco until they eventually show up, and Boco's like, "Hey, yo, there's two of you, what's going on here?" So it turns out that this was all just a big old misunderstanding, and Boco apologizes for not understanding what was going on with the cars, and so Bill and Ben go ahead and get Boco's cars.
Maddening, he said, is the word.
Bull crap, we all know what the real word is.
Brian, don't! Oh, well, a bird, bird, bird. Well, a bird, bird, bird.
The next episode features Gordon being all grumpy about the fact that mainline coaches and trucks are being sent off of the branch line. Gordon's an asshole. That evening, Gordon has to take a massive express train, but his driver sees a lady wearing a big yellow hat move her head, and the driver thinks that that is the signalman waving the flag to go. So Gordon ends up leaving all of the passengers and the luggage behind, and it ends up being really, really late by the time he actually notices that nobody's on his train, to the point where Edward was already super duper late for his train, so he had to go first and take the main line, mainly because the station masters didn't notice. So Gordon is forced to take the branch line, and he stays there overnight. The next day, Bill and Ben notice Gordon there, and they joke on how that's not Gordon, because Gordon wouldn't take the branch line, and they joke saying, "Oh, if that's not Gordon, then we should probably throw him into the scrapyard or into the river." Gordon, thinking that they're being serious, sees that Boco's nearby and asks Boco to get them to stop it. Boco does just so, and Gordon thinks that Boco saved his life. I liked this episode. It was nice seeing Bill and Ben get a proper introduction, and seeing the first appearance of Boco was nice too. The Gordon episode, while not the best the series has to offer so far, was also pleasantly fun. A good batch of episodes, I'd say so. This episode begins with Edward about to take some visitors over to see Bill and Ben. But the one problem is that he can't move right, mainly because he's old. Gordon and James make fun of him for this, while Duck and Boco tell them to shut up, and then Edward is on his merry way. Edward takes the visitors to Bill and Ben, and then Bill and Ben take the visitors to the quarry to see how their clay gets made. Edward then takes the visitors home, but then Edward stops in the middle of the railway because one of his crank pins ended up breaking. So he pushes through either way, and he ends up making it. This next episode is technically the first Thomas and Friends Halloween episode, even though it technically isn't a Halloween episode, just an episode that's spookier than the rest that we've seen so far. That being Percy's ghostly trick. The episode begins with Percy telling Thomas and Toby a ghost story about the ghost train. Thomas doesn't believe in the story, but Percy does because his driver told him so. Thomas then rolls away, and then Percy's driver tells him that he made the story up and that the ghost train isn't real. Percy then heads back to the night, but he doesn't see that there is a crate of flounder in the middle of the rails, and he ends up crashing into it. The powder gets all over Percy, making him look all white like a ghost. Him and Toby get the idea to pull a spooky little prank on Thomas, making him think that Percy is actually a ghost. Toby then heads back to the shed, telling Thomas that Percy was in an accident, but more importantly, that Percy is now a ghost. Thomas doesn't believe Toby at first, but it then does once he hears Percy's a ghost at the shed door. Thomas gets scared by the sight of the ghostly Percy and runs away, and the next morning he is still terrified of Percy's whistle. So where the Edward story is a pretty bland and generic and standard Thomas episode, Percy's ghostly trick is a fun, spooky episode, and I think it was because I was just in the right mood, because I'm recording this episode, and it should be out very closely to October, and I guess I was just in the right mood for some spooky stuff. So yeah, I had some fun watching this spooky little Thomas and Friends episode, and again, this was one of my favorites as a kid. Season 2 had a lot of good episodes, the more I think about it. And we'll see if it continues to have more episodes with the Season 2 finale tomorrow. Well, hey, we actually had a soft landing this time. That was pretty cool. Who the frig are you? I'm Film Buff. You don't look like Film Buff. You look like Thor. But I'm not Thor. I'm Film Buff. Okay, sure. Wait a minute. Stop laughing at me. No, stop it. Everyone stop laughing. God, I'm in a sitcom universe, aren't I? For some reason, I look like Thor in this universe. Wait, you're an interdimensional traveler? Yeah, it's kind of a long story. So, is that your SpongeBob in this universe? Oh, that guy? Oh, no, that's just a pillow. Sometimes it's hard to tell. I know, right? But, no, our SpongeBob disappeared a long time ago. Huh. A lot of dimensions seem to have missing SpongeBobs. It was around 2017. Our SpongeBob just disappeared. It was right after the troll apocalypse. Wait, hold the phone. You guys had the troll apocalypse too? Yeah. No way. It sounds like a common thing among some dimensions, probably. I don't know. I'm not the interdimensional traveler. Neither am I. Fun fact. Evil demon from my dimension, knocked me out, took me to all these different dimensions. Well, more like, abandoned me through all these different dimensions. And I was able to find this portal gun. Or it wasn't found. It was given to me by a French scientist. I forget that sometimes. But it doesn't work properly, so I'm just guessing. And I actually made it back to my home dimension, but he did the same thing again, and now it's broken again, so I'm back where I started. So, God, it's just really annoying. Well, sorry to hear about that. Is there anything I can do for you? No, not really. Okay, bye. There's just one more thing. Do you think that my SpongeBob might possibly be your SpongeBob and that other SpongeBob? Because a lot of dimensions are losing a SpongeBob. I mean, that is a possibility. God only knows how many or how few SpongeBobs there are in the grand multiverse. Well, thanks for the chat, Thor. Film buff. No problem, Timmy. Film buff. Note to self, no more edibles before bed. This episode opens with Percy collecting several things of hay and straw and taking them over to the station in order for Toby to take them to some farmers. But Thomas yells at Percy for being late, but Percy's excuse is that the hay is very heavy and slows him down.
I'm Green Caterpillar with red stripes, continued Thomas firmly.
God damn, Thomas, why you gotta be such a fucking asshole? Percy then delivers a bunch of straw over to the docks, but some idiot worker dropped a load of treacle all over Percy. Several of the workmen try to get the treacle off of him as best as they can, but Percy still remained very sticky after the whole situation. Percy then heads back over to the station, but the rough wind is getting straw all on the tracks, making it hard for Percy to get by. Not to mention the fact that several pieces of straws are sticking to him. We cut back over to the station where Thomas is impatiently waiting for Percy to get by, and then several different passengers at the station are laughing at Percy as he walks by with huge clumps of straw on top of him. Percy then heads back to the sheds, but then his driver shows him what he actually looks like, and then he figures out why everyone was laughing at him. And so the driver tries to get all that straw off of Percy, and then Toby and Thomas laugh at him. Such good fucking friends! And just like last season, this season's final episode is a Christmas special. Topham Hatt orders Thomas to get a big Christmas tree for tonight's Christmas event and carolings. Thomas gets the tree, but he ends up crashing into a giant pit of snow, and more snow ends up falling on top of him. So Topham Hatt realizes that Thomas is late, so he sends Donald and Douglas out to go find him. Donald and Douglas see that Thomas is trapped within the snow, and so Donald, Douglas, and a bunch of other workmen, including Thomas's driver and fireman, dig Thomas and, more importantly, the giant Christmas tree out of the snow. The three of them head back to Knapford Station, where they all have a giant Christmas light party featuring all of the engines that we met throughout the past 2 seasons, and even Santa Claus shows up. Wow, this is the perfect video to release only 4 days before October starts. Merry Christmas? Okay, but in all seriousness, my thoughts on these episodes is that Woolly Bear, I did not like at all. Mainly the fact that Thomas is just such a fucking dick in this episode, and everyone else is mean to Percy for absolutely no reason. The Christmas episode, on the other hand, I thought was perfectly fine. A typical rescue type story, and it's nice and cute. And with that, we have finished Thomas and Friends Season 2. Which means it's time I start to introduce a brand new segment. Ladies and gentlemen and others, welcome to the Train Count. Now you might be wondering, Film Buff, what the fuck is this? Well, I'll tell you. At the end of every single season analysis, we are going to be taking a little break before I give you my thoughts on the entire season, and we are going to take some time to count every new engine that we met this season. I technically did this in Season 1, but I didn't officially call it the Train Count. So I'm going to go ahead and count Season 1 engines right now. As I mentioned, at the start of Season 1, we only know 5 engines in the show, that being Thomas, Gordon, James, Henry, and Edward, making the total count for the beginning of Season 1 as 5 engines, and later on in the season, we would meet Percy and Toby bringing us a grand total of engines in Season 1 to 7. Now let's move on to Season 2, because this is very interesting, because this is the part where we basically get introduced to a new engine every other episode. And I'm going to try my best to do it in as close to chronological order as possible. The first new engine that we meet this season is Duck. So, that makes one new engine for Season 2, making our grand total 8. Then after that, we would be not properly, but still introduced to the characters of Bill and Ben in the episode Percy Takes a Plunge, making that 10 engines. Then we get introduced to our first diesel engine, who was uncreatively named Diesel in the episode Pop Goes the Diesel. And then a few episodes later, we would get introduced to our next set of twins, Donald and Douglas. And then finally, we would be introduced to 2 more diesel engines, Daisy and Boco, respectively. So for Season 1, we met 7 engines, and for Season 2, we met 8 engines, bringing the grand total of engines in the series so far as 15 engines. We just did math, bitches. I'm gonna be 100% honest. I expect this number to get into the triple digits by the time we're done with this show, and by the time we get to Season 24. And for all I know, this could get to the triple digits before we even finish the model series. I doubt that's possible, but it could happen. Wow, 3 transitions in 5 minutes. That is impressive. So that was Season 2, and overall, I'd say it was a very well-made season. More of the same from Season 1, only this time the lighting is far brighter, and it's very beautiful, I'd say. And we get to see more of the island of Sodor, which I very like. Yes, as we expressed in the train count section, there are more engines, a lot more, but it's not overwhelming yet. We're not at the point in the series where they're basically forgetting that certain engines even exist. And to reiterate some stuff I said in the mid-season analysis, the political aspect of this show is very screwed up. And yes, this train show for children does have some political aspects on how the power works between the trains and the humans and even the diesel engines in this show. Because as the series goes on, we're definitely going to see more and more about how dictatorship-like the diesels can get, and more importantly, how dictatorship Sir Topham Hatt can be sometimes. Because we've already seen how much of a dictator Sir Topham Hatt can be, but just you wait. But anyway, that will be it for Season 2 of Thomas and Friends, and that'll be it for Thomas and Friends for this year's version of SteamTember. But don't think that we're done, because for the next 4 days, we will be talking about the Thomas and Friends sister series, Shining Time Station. I will explain why I will be talking about this show in the next video, so stay tuned for that. But anyway, guys, I would just like to say thank you so much for watching, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and ring the bell to be notified of when future videos are uploaded. If we get to 300 subscribers by the end of the year, then I will make one giant video reviewing every single SpongeBob video game. So if you want to see that happen, please hit the subscribe button. And thank you guys so much for the amazing reception that I've been getting from SteamTember. It's been absolutely amazing. We will definitely be doing this again next year. But we still have 4 more episodes left to go. So stay tuned tomorrow where we talk about Season 1, Episode 1 of Shining Time Station. But until then, I'll see you later. Bye!